Breaking news, women do not like conservative men. They won't go on a date with them. They find them repulsive, and it makes perfect sense why if you put yourself in the shoes of a woman for even 5 seconds.
Talking about politics these days tends to feel like walking through a minefield. Every day we see outrage online about dating, politics, and culture. All conservative men are wife beaters. Women reject men for their politics. The birth rate is collapsing because men are failing. But guess what? Most of what you hear is half the story. Misunderstood narratives, missing context, and a culture obsessed with drama. Look, people love to paint everything in extremes, good versus evil, alpha versus beta, left versus right. But life isn't that simple. Reality is nuanced. People grow and preferences evolve. In modern dating, well, it's a battlefield shaped more so by chaos, economics, and human behavior, not ideology. There's plenty to unpack here, but today I want to focus on how politics and leaning to the extremes have shaped dating and society today, and why I believe that this is catastrophe waiting to happen.
I think people are losing the ability to hold nuance, or the idea that multiple things can be true at once, because we're losing safety overall as a society. It is no secret that every single day there is more and more unprecedented news than ever before. And as a therapist, and as someone who is chronically online, and as someone who is also just living in society today, I have noticed a drastic difference where it comes to people's ability to regulate their nervous system. And quick reminder that regulation doesn't necessarily mean calm, it just means the ability to come down into a place where your prefrontal cortex, your logic and reasoning is able to engage. But our nervous systems are primed for survival, right? And so if the society that we live in, the community, the culture that we live in is not safe, our nervous systems are going to elevate. And it's happening across the board. It's happening to my clients, it's happening to my friends, my family, myself. And so when a nervous system is upregulated, when we are in survival mode, when we are in fight or flight, we cling to ideas of control. We cling to things that make us feel like we have some sort of semblance of some kind of organization in this chaotic world. And so part of that is putting people in groups. Part of that is being able to say, oh, this influencer I like, they're in the good category. This influencer I don't like, they're in the bad category. Or if a friend or a loved one does something wrong, instead of having the safety and the space to consider, okay, should I work this out with them? Do I need to talk to them? Do I need to figure something out? If our nervous systems are already so elevated, it's just going to go, okay, they're in the bad category.
Let's start with nuance. Nuance, as I'd come to find, is a concept that's been blatantly thrown out of the window for the past few years or so. And to be fair, this isn't entirely the fault of the common folks. We are struggling. Just look at the numbers. Back in 2015, our deficit was at $439 billion. Now take a guess as to how big the numbers are. Indeed, we are now at a whopping $1.8 trillion, a massive jump from just 1 decade ago. This, as you'd come to find with our current situation, does not paint a good picture for our financial state as a country. People do not feel secure. Student debts are piling up faster than people can pay them back, even long after graduation. Home ownership rates, as we've mentioned in previous videos, the numbers are startlingly low. And more recently, people are losing aid from the government. Take SNAP for an example. Security is starting to feel more and more like a myth. The system is not fair to us, and we are the first to feel its pitfalls. And what happens when you deal with an unfair system? You get citizens who are tired, angry, and observably negative. Considering how out of touch people at the top are, it naturally is difficult to get it through their skin that, hey, people are suffering. Sad to say, but people on the top ring don't care. They're not the ones affected, and their wallets remain full. So the next best option to take your anger out on, as you'd come to find, is anyone who disagrees with you. Now here we are, dealing with opposites, seeing things in exclusively black and white.
There's an incredible lack of nuanced reasoning in the world nowadays. I mean, it doesn't take talking to too many people to discover that very few people seem to have the capability of handling nuanced thinking, of actually realizing that things aren't always black and white, that there's a lot of gray, that it's never all or nothing. Yeah. But unfortunately, the mainstream media and social media are conditioning people to have like close to zero nuance in their reasoning. And this is not good at all, because the world is very much gray. Like, there are very few things in life where you can say it's black and white. That's just not how life is. Like, even when it comes to the cruelty in nature, there's actually a point to that cruelty at times. Like, People can get mad at seeing predators eat prey, but it helps balance the ecosystem. By the predators eating the prey, it makes it so that there won't be too few plants out there, right? Because they eat the things that eat the plants, and therefore there's balance, right? So there's a lot of nuance in life. Nothing is ever black and white. You can't say that all predators are bad. No, they serve a very important purpose in an ecosystem. And that's just one example that's found in nature of how life is very gray.
Our current circumstances have effectively killed nuance in a lot of people's minds. One thing you will observe in recent times is that when someone has done something or is in support of this one cause, people have this tendency to just assume in the superlatives. It'll either be glazing, like when a celebrity does the bare minimum of human decency on cam, or you get utterly flamed. Either way, the middle ground is just non-existent now. A woman gets off benefits and lands a better job. 5 kids, by the way. Impressive, right? Yet all people see is the headline, got off benefits. Nobody talks about her effort, her reality, or the fact that some people do make active efforts to improve their lives. Missing context creates the perfect setup for outrage. So some, they'll see the amount of children she has, then jump to the conclusion that she's another one of those who have been living off of government aid without lifting a very capable finger. A man sticking to the preachings in his faith and preferring a more traditional lifestyle. Well, apparently, it's now time to clock his ass because he's this monster who just wants to cage his wife and give his kids no freedom. They won't talk about how he does everything to ensure his family's safety and security in the long run. All they'll see is how he's still sticking onto the grain rather than going against it. And some people see that as a slight as a sign that he's not going with the times and is stuck in the old cruel ways. Nobody is winning because everyone is hating either way. Even when you're doing something good for yourself and your loved ones, you get flack. They'll be quick to seek blind spots in your causes, making them assume that you don't care about something important. Like you can be out there hosting a feeding program for kids in your area, then they'll be mad that you're not hosting it in X, Y, or Z area, drawing the conclusion that, oh, guess you never really cared about keeping kids fed. See how extreme the logic goes? Outrage gets released in the most pointless of ways, and oftentimes towards things that aren't even worthy of any anger. Speaking of which, have you noticed how selective this outrage is? Real violence. Kids getting hurt in places they were meant to be safe in, people dying in awful and even preventable ways is often ignored. But when someone you dislike is targeted, suddenly everyone celebrates. Suddenly the violence is okay, when at the end of the day, the vast majority of us are walking the same cracked bridge, even with different destinations in mind.
You were jumping and cheering and laughing and celebrating at the thought of poor people not being able to feed their children because they weren't getting their food stamps benefits as a result of the government shutdown. There is something wrong with you. If the thought of children in Palestine getting shot in the head by snipers or getting their legs blown off by bombs being dropped by Israel, if you don't see a problem with that, there is something wrong with you. You're a cruel person. And so if you're a cruel person in all these other ways, then more than likely you're going to be a cruel person to her.
Now let's talk politics. Some claim if you're conservative, you're automatically terrible in relationships. Supporting a particular country, violent. Voting red equals misogynist. Conservative equals cruel. Let me get this straight. I, for one, think no one should celebrate over the suffering of other people, especially those as vulnerable as children and those in poverty. If you're out there smug about the struggles of another person, I absolutely agree that you're in the wrong for that. But in the case of people simply voting for the side you're opposing, it's absurd. Politics doesn't equate to morality. Not agreeing with someone doesn't make them dangerous.
You could say you prefer cats over dogs, and somehow someone will make it about the fact that you want to kill dogs. Like, they'll be like, oh my god, you want to commit a genocide against all dogs in the world? And it's like, no, I just said I'd rather have a pet cat. Like, oh my god. What the fuck? Like, why is it that when you say one thing, people just assume that means it's just the absolute worst version of that situation. It's like, oh yeah, I really like cats. So you hate every other fucking animal? Like, no, I'm just a normal person. I just like cats more. And it sucks because you can't make any statement online or anywhere because people will turn it into the worst thing in the world. It's like, wow, I don't know how you did that with my non-harmful statement and somehow turned it into the most harmful, worst thing in the world. It's honestly a talent some people have. Because, like, what? Like, I once talked about how, like, children died because of child mortality rates at birth, and someone's like, you hate babies, you want them to die. What the fuck? I never said that.
A lot of folks have gotten very addicted to jumping to conclusions. Now, it's one thing to deduct a simple observation, but then there's this other deal with jumping to the absolute worst of conclusions. Because no, that person is not psychopathic for voting for a party you dislike. No, that person doesn't want children in other places to die if they just want us to focus first on the children we have at home. See the missed nuances I've mentioned earlier. These people have gotten consumed by their rage, so much so that there is no such thing as a gray area. It's only bad versus good. And of course, they're on the good side.
These men, they lack empathy. They're not problem solvers. They're babies. They're big old babies that just want everything handed to them because of where they were born and what color their skin is.
Then there's the myth that conservative men date liberal women because they want to control them, or because they're racist or greedy. Oftentimes, it's just preference. Many men, regardless of race, want the same things: a stable job, a home, a family, and security. Nobody said it's because of skin color. And while white supremacy is a thing, it's one very bold claim to make towards people whom you simply do not see eye to eye with on certain matters.
And you have to say what we all say, which is, yeah, I don't really follow politics. But like, there's levels to this, man. You got to be discreet. You got to be really good at it. And it's not that hard once you get used to it. You just like lie a lot.
Wow.
If you can just lie really well.
Wow. Again, conservative values. The conservative man is very comfortable lying, but this should be obvious because they voted for a man who is a habitual liar. And that doesn't bother them at all.
About lying to keep peace. Yet men sometimes lie in relationships to avoid drama. Happy wife, happy life isn't about conservatism. It's about being human. Because let's face it, some people just aren't open for discussions that may come with disagreement. Remember how in a previous video I made about SNAP and the government shutdown, I mentioned how our elders knew better than to bring politics to the dinner table. It applies here. I genuinely do not think it's healthy for us to take our beliefs everywhere, so much so to the point of fracturing the family. It is never worth it. People back then, they disagreed too, but they had enough nuance back then to know that their loved ones come first before all in any of this. The art of compromisation, of allowing people individuality in their mindsets, it's dying. What's worse is that some folks are okay with this fact.
It's so funny because liberal women are painted by these right-wing, conservative, incel racists as they're all whores that just want to fuck. So why would they give a fuck about your political positions? The reality is a lot of these women are very much interested in long-term relationships and marriage. And so when they find out that you're a Trump supporter, that you're a conservative, well, they know, oh, if I marry this guy, I'm essentially electing myself to be a slave and a servant for the rest of my life.
I find that being so quick to assume the absolute worst in a person over a stance they took to be straight up toxic. Here's the thing, when people vote, they are bound to keep certain interests in mind. So if, say, for example, a candidate were to put economy as the forefront of their campaign and you care about bettering it, that would obviously give them an edge over the competition. Similar logic applies if you want a president to focus on education. Naturally then, you'd vote for whoever has the more fleshed out plans for that sector. This will come off as bad for some, but not everyone thinks that deeply of politics, and the majority will care about what would benefit the country as a sole entity more at the moment of voting. You could argue that one candidate is a piece of crap in terms of personality, but if they could do something, or at least promise to do something about a particular concern, then people who care about that will vote for them. And I already know someone will call this foolish and selfish, but I will be frank when I say that in our current state, the only ones who can lift us up is ourselves. In an environment where no one is working in our best interests, why is it that we're expected to also not function according to our own best interests? Life is difficult enough, and your average Joe already has enough on his hands to stress on matters beyond him. And if you'd come to notice, women aren't rejecting conservative men because of ideology alone. Young women will act as young people do. They roll with the times, and more often than not, may get rebellious in certain aspects. Relationships and bigger life choices come later. Modern dating chaos, hookup culture, entitlement, apps, financial pressures creates mismatched expectations. Judging from a distance just adds bias. And this more progressiveness in the youth is not necessarily a new phenomenon. Look back at the age of rock and roll. Look back at when the Beatles were at their peak, during the more poppy, flashy times and disco came in full swing. The youth were certainly far from being conservative at the time, and you could see how pop culture influenced that. Then observe how when youth from those times grew up, they eventually relaxed more with the rebellious tendencies and the whole going against the grain. Why is that? Since just because something is progressive and modern, it won't always automatically be right or practical in the long run. And I'm saying this as a man with my fair share of liberal views. Outside of the rage, I definitely think being young influences much of these extreme conclusion crafting against the perceived opponents. It's only a matter of time until folks grow up, and many realize that the world isn't as black and white as they might have thought it to be when they were younger, with completely different battles to face. When you're young, it's easy to be so focused on the end goal to the point that we forget to simply let people decide first. To not control them, but to give people the legitimate freedom of choice to begin with.
It says you are so unafraid of her utilizing those freedoms in such a way where she's going to betray you or be unfaithful to you or hurt you. You're not afraid of her. You're not afraid of what she's going to do with her freedom. That there is nothing more alpha than that. Who is more of the badass? The guy who's in the room with a tiger, but the tiger isn't chained up. It's free to just roam around, but he just sits there cool as a cucumber and is completely unafraid of the tiger? Or the guy who can be in a room with a tiger if it's chained up to a wall?
And here's where it gets deeper. Modern dating is full of double standards. Women's preferences are now always empowerment, even when unattainable sometimes. Men's preferences are automatically insecurity, extremism, or hatred. Women say no short men, no broke men, no timid men, no men believing in this or that. But if a man sets boundaries, he's attacked. He believes in one simple belief, and suddenly he's the bad guy. Let me make this very clear here. Men should have the right to care when their boundaries are overstepped. Actually, let's draw it back to the basics. Men should be allowed to have boundaries without getting attacked. Just as men are capable of making wrong decisions here and there, women are too. So if a man's wife makes a decision lacking in foresight, it's important for him to step in. If their woman is making a bad decision, then naturally it should be okay for them to not be comfortable with that. It's a no-brainer, but men want to have their say too. This is something that gets very much diminished with the blatant way some people are quick on plastering the most negative of labels on them over their beliefs. Remember, equality only works if both sides can choose freely. Isn't that the whole essence of feminism? We're not here to bring either side down. We're leveling the playing field so that we all get to decide for ourselves and carve out the path we'd be happiest in. Men aren't trying to control women. They're setting boundaries to protect themselves. Fear drives both sides. Women fear losing independence or choosing the wrong man who might be okay with that. Now, women should 100% have the choice to live as they wish, whether that is to be a part of the workforce or to be more focused on family. Whatever it is that they choose, there should be no issue in that. That in mind, what women shouldn't do is to shame either fellow women or men who desire a more traditional lifestyle. Not to mention that being part of the workforce should not equate to you being pushed in the front of the line. What we're aiming for here is equity. We get what we need, and we all get to be included, even when outcomes aren't guaranteed. Their choices aren't a slight against existing rights. They're simply living a different lifestyle. Men fear exploitation, disrespect, and emotional abandonment. Political arguments often mask these fears. They're so easy to overlook when people grab their paint and start smudging nasty labels over them. Of course, there is no denying that there are also extremist men. There are cruel men in the world who contribute to our struggles. But most men, they're just trying to survive and actually live in the fulfilling way they wish. Many men want to simply have families and be able to take care of their loved ones. This should not be an impossible or terrible wish when we've already seen before how government aid tried to erase the provider's role in the family. The welfare programs that are going haywire today, now that the able-bodied people who've gone over-reliant on them are getting removed, just proves how important it is to not belittle the role men play in their families. Ultimately, men are pulling back. Effort is expected, boundaries are attacked, standards are demonized. So men choose intentionality over dominance. They want stability, not chaos. And women, they want freedom but still want grounded partners. This is the cultural standoff driving all the viral debates you see online. And you want to see what's ironic here?
The reality is liberal women tend to be the most attractive. They're the sexiest. They dress the sexiest. They're the most fashionable. They're the most comfortable with their sexuality. And so because of this, you actually have a lot of conservative men who still go after liberal women, even though they know that they're full-blown liberal women.
This part right here just demonstrates how superficial some people have gotten. I genuinely believe that as a society, we shouldn't let visual value dictate our stances. Frankly, it is shallow. And considering how the whole point is to ensure women secure equal rights and security, making their looks the focus just makes you do a 180 degree on how personal beliefs are the top priority. Just a notable observation. That being said, one thing we have to prioritize is taking responsibility as a collective. Yes, our system requires many fixes right now, and indeed we all want different things. But let me remind you that we're in this country together. Not all of us have privileged backgrounds. Not all of us can afford to even retire at an earlier age to enjoy life a bit more. Doesn't it concern you that we're marching towards a future where we might have to work until we're old and brittle? Doesn't it concern you that so much money is getting spent on other countries instead of our own, where so many people need help with healthcare, housing, and food? So get off your high horse and just think for a moment. Is your hate productive? I feel like you already know the answer. It is not. Picking on people who disagree with you, who are also struggling, achieves nothing. Labeling them as demon spawn for what you see as a controversial take does nothing. Instead, why don't we just listen to each other for once? None of us are 100% left or right. There will always be spots for us to meet in the middle. And I sure hope one of those spots is dedicated to the betterment of this country. Because when all is said and all is done, the enemy is not those who disagree with us. The enemy is the one who made these disagreements a thing in the first place. The enemy is the people who pit us together, watching us from a higher pedestal as we scramble for a chance to step on greener grass. Consider listening to people you normally wouldn't listen to. This is something I personally like to do because guess what? Hearing different perspectives is healthy. Seeing beyond your viewpoint is ideal. You won't know true empathy and understanding until you see in the lens of those in different circumstances, making decisions based on said circumstances. Politics aren't like as you see them in the movies. There is no good or bad. The decisions made are always fueled by personal motivations. People have values they hold closer than the rest. And there are people out there who are too preoccupied with simply trying to get by. We shouldn't be coming after the desperate choices made by those who are also stuck between a rock and a hard place. Do you ever notice your politicians getting richer and richer? They make promises, and those promises aren't delivered. While we should encourage people to make better choices in voting, why are we coming after voters rather than the corrupt people on top? We've gotten too comfortable with letting these candidates and people in power lie to our faces. That was never normal, and it should never be seen as normal. It's less about the voters now and more so about those who see the plights of the common folk, thinking of it as a weak spot to exploit. So stop hating on those who've made their fair share of difficult choices themselves. Whether you're on one side or the other, the point shouldn't be hyper-focused onto the choice itself. We have freedom of choice, and this is something we should be able to safe keep. Let's give each other grace. If citizens can't fight for one singular cause, we can at least agree on fighting for our collective right to choose. When the day comes that we wholeheartedly listen to each other and reject the extremities, only then can we win over the common enemy.
Fun fact, we can disagree without hating each other. Did you know that? Hating other people because they disagree with you is so short-sighted, because it takes so much energy to just have anger, turmoil, just vitriol in your heart. I think I can vouch for almost every human being on this planet when I say that all of us want to have a good life. We all want a high quality of living. We all want to feel fulfilled.
Modern dating isn't a battle between good and evil, alpha and beta, left and right. It's a clash between stability and autonomy. The everyday men aren't trying to control women, they're protecting themselves. The average women aren't rejecting men out of moral superiority. They're navigating life, culture, and their choices. Bottom line is, a lot of us are young and trudging through a situation heavily against our favor. Let's give ourselves the opportunity to actually grow from the past. People back then also shamed other people on opposing sides for being evil. This is the old way that we should be avoiding. This is the mistake we can no longer afford to make in the current age. The key? Context, nuance, and understanding human behavior. Stop blaming ideology. Start seeing people for who they are, and stop assuming the worst simply because you see disagreement as a mortal flaw. We are not monoliths operating in absolutes. I believe that once this sinks in within society, that's when we can achieve true order. Current champ once again reminding you that free decision comes over dictation, and freedom always comes first.
But hold on for a moment. We here at Current Champ would first like to thank everyone for the support. You guys staying here with us as we go off on various topics means so much to us, hence why we're very grateful for your support.
Rest assured that we have even crazier stories and more pressing discussions coming up, so keep a lookout. We cannot wait to continue this journey with you all, and will always be here, improving and keeping you entertained.
See you on the next one.
See you all in the next video. Peace.
And I'ma just do me. A new thing hold me down on 2 feet. That's 10 toes, bust 4, 5, and 6 foes. Need 2.